Okay, good morning. We are live. I always feel like I slouch in this chair because I'm on a stool, and so my back gets all. Anyhow, I need to behave myself and learn how to have better posture. Welcome to our critique session. It's January 21st, and we finally had a break in our cold snap. It was like 30 below zero for well over a week. It just felt really, really long. And then yesterday, it was funny because I was driving home and it was like minus 13 and all the mirrors fogged up all of a sudden. And it was like we just hit this wave of warmer air. And the Chinook blew in, that's what we call it. And suddenly the snow starts sliding off the roof. The dog gets real energetic. We all got more energetic, actually. It just felt really good to have some warmer weather out there. And then of course you go to town and you see some guy walking around wearing shorts. After those cold temperatures, it does feel pretty balmy here. Anyhow, I'm still spending time in the studio every day working on my book. I'm painting towards this heart-led landscape book, and because I'm brand new to writing a book, it's a little intimidating, and I've been trying different things to help me keep momentum going. And what I've been doing lately is just painting the demonstrations for the book. So I'm going to show you one of them in a minute. I hope that's not a spoiler for you. I really enjoy talking a little bit about my process. So we're going to do that and take a look at what I've been working on. With this whole painting for the book, it's really easy to feel like there's pressure. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about creative flow. It's something I've been thinking about and writing about. In fact, I'm working on an article on flow for Uppercase Magazine, which I'm excited to be doing. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to tell you about that, actually. But I also have this book here. It's called Art and Fear. And I really have resonated with this book. Actually haven't finished reading it. I started it a while ago, and I started underlining things and writing down notes. And one day I'd like to write my own book on artistic mindset and fearless creativity. And so I like being able to refine my thoughts on it. And there's some really great things that have been written by other artists. We know Liz Gilbert has her book Big Magic. That's a really good one. Nancy Hillis's Artist's Journey. There's Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. Lots of different writers who talk about creativity, creative mindset, how to unlock your inner creative artist. We hear about artistic blocks all the time, and that's why there's so much talk and writing about it, and yet it's still a hard thing to understand. And I like that by having so many different people writing about it, hopefully you can find somebody who resonates with you and talks in a way you understand. In this book, chapter 3, I wanted to read to you a little bit about from this book. This chapter is titled Fears About Yourself. And the quote that they have at the top is, "We have met the enemy and he is us." And I think it's so true when it comes to making art. We can really be our own worst enemy. Working alone in the studio, all we have to listen to is our own thoughts. And a lot of times they tell us we're not worthy, or we're not doing it right, or, that painting is hideous and who are you to think you can make something good? And I don't know about you, but the people I really like to be around are the people who make me feel awesome about myself. The ones who believe the best of you, who just trust you to make good choices. And I want to rise up and be the person that they think that I am. And I really have tried to remember that when it comes to dealing with my kids. Because there's this school of thought that like kids are little rotters and you just need to straighten them out. And I would so much rather be the kind of parent that, that just like the kind of person that makes other people feel really trusted and loved. Yes, we guide them, but we also, believe that they're capable of great things. And speaking of which, I know Heather and Sarah, you guys are making lunch and feeding kids, and you're all watching as a family, and that's pretty awesome. I was a homeschooling mom myself. For many years, and I have a special place in my heart for education and for teaching. Well, I love teaching, you know that. And when I was teaching my kids, that was when I really got to discover that, and it translates to here. And I'm so proud of my kids now. They are in school and they're in high school and they're doing so well, and so that's pretty awesome too. Okay. From Art and Fear, I'm just going to read to you. He says, fears about art making fall into two families: fears about yourself and fears about your reception by others. So we have fears that we don't have what it takes, and we also have fears that other people won't understand it. And that's why it's so hard when we have comments like that show a fundamental lack of understanding about our art. How long did it take you to paint that? What's it going to look like when it's done? And it is done already, you know. Boy, it's too bad that you don't know how to draw better. Your painting would be so much better then. So we come with those fears, and when those are in our heads and in our hearts, it does hinder our art. And so we do need to spend some time on thinking about and understanding that. Oh, here we go. That we don't have to listen to those thoughts. And I don't know this book was written by two guys, David Bales and Ted Orland. So I don't know which one was writing which part. But he says, we talk about coming to a point where the work doesn't come easily. And we think, aha, you know, just as I feared, I don't have what it takes. And he says, that's wrong thinking. By definition, whatever you have, is exactly what you need to produce your best work. There is probably no clearer waste of psychic energy and worry than worrying about how much talent you have, and probably no worry more common. It's not something we can change, so why are we worrying about it? And I think for me, I often felt like I needed to be good enough to make art. You know, we worry about it because we think it's a qualification to make art. Then another quote that I love from this chapter is, if you think good work is somehow synonymous with perfect work, you are headed for big trouble. And that was me when I was learning to paint. He says, art is human. Error is human. Ergo, art is error. And think about that. Art is error. We talk about happy accidents like they should be rare, maybe, but they're not. It's part of just making art. Amazing. And he says the same thing that Nancy Hillis says in The Artist's Journey. For you, the seed for your next artwork lies embedded in the imperfections of your current piece. What you need to know about the next piece further on in the book is contained in the last piece you did. So with that thought, that what you need to know is in the work you just finished, is the seeds for your next work. Let's take a look at what I've been working on lately. Just move over to my work surface here. And I just wanted to show you because this was the very first sketch that I did. This is Montreal City Hall. And in fact, I think I can even show you my reference photo. There it is. So that's my reference photo. It's Montreal City Hall. There's a beautiful square in Montreal. They have musicians out there playing and tourists everywhere. It's a lovely spot. And there we go, back to the work surface. So my very first sketch was just really playful, and it's actually pretty decent. Makes me kind of happy to look at. But it isn't a big serious painting that it was just the very first seed of the next painting. And so I started with that, just kind of getting an idea of what I wanted to paint. And then I did a value study. I'm just going to make sure you can see that here. There we go. And then I decided I better start painting. Oh, no, I didn't actually. I did another value study. And this time I used graphite. And this is actually a graphite putty. And so the putty is like Play-Doh, only very, very dirty. So homeschooling moms, you might want to have fun with that with your kids, but it will get everywhere. Just touching it alone gets your fingers covered in black stuff. And I just pressed it onto my paper and made shapes that indicated, the shape of the building. And then I used a flat brush, this guy, this is a Da Vinci Forte synthetic flat, 20 millimeter. Anyhow, I just used this brush to kind of carve out those shapes, pull the graphite around with the wet brush. And this was really fun to do. I really like the kind of blocky, chunky feel of it. And then from there, I was feeling playful. I'd done three things that I actually quite liked. And so then I moved over and decided I had to start painting, the big deal, painting in color. So I went and I started with this one here. And I'm very aware that as a watercolor painter, as a loose painter, the first version tells me what I don't know. So this painting was going to reveal all the things that I'm not ready to paint yet. So there were some things that I was ready to paint. I really liked the spire here, and it ended up being kind of the focus of all of my paintings. And that was good to realize. But I also discovered this beautiful color right here. It's an ultramarine blue mixed with manganese violet. Schminke makes the manganese violet that I like. And then we pulled in Mars Orange, which is made by Core, I believe. And they made this beautiful warm violet that I just really like. And it was a little bit reminiscent of some of the colors Thomas Schaller uses, although I think he's more of like an ultramarine and burnt sienna kind of guy. So it wasn't quite the same colors, but it had that same feel. And so I really love that color, but I didn't feel like this big pillar did the painting any favors. It felt like a distraction from all of this stuff. Also in my reference photo, I had this cellist sitting playing, and there was a lot of other stuff going on, but I really liked the guy playing the cello. I wanted to include him, so I kind of suggested him in here. But as I painted, I mean, he's not defined very well, so I kind of felt like I had lost my way, and I stopped. I didn't go any further. I set it aside to dry, and then I moved on to try another version, realizing that if I was going to put this pillar in, it probably needed to be the focal point, which means like the top doesn't need to be cut off. Then I'd want to see the top of it. So it would change my entire painting to keep that pillar in. And then I wasn't sure about the cellist either. So we moved over to another version. Oh, and I'm not sure which one was next. I've got about 3 here. I think it was, it's kind of all a blur. Okay, it must have been, this one was next. And this version, you can see I took that big pillar out and I moved my musician over to this side, which felt like a better balance. But proportionally, I'm not sure about the feeling. For this one, I really felt like I struggled with the building. Trying to put in those windows, trying to get enough detail so that it feels like the place that it is. You know, parts of it were working, but parts of it felt just a little bit too, like somebody trying too hard to be loose, maybe is the way to put it. I didn't want to have that feeling. I knew I needed to keep going. And so I set that one aside. And then for the next version, I started thinking, what if I pulled back a little bit, changed my angle slightly? I had multiple photos of this place. And so for this version, I actually chose a different reference photo, one that slightly changed the angle. The pillar wasn't even in that photo. The cellist wasn't in that photo. So I could focus on the building, which was also a little bit smaller and further away. So you can see here, I'm exploring that. There were some concrete, I don't know what they're called, kind of these ledges that came out. And so I was trying to get those in, debating whether or not to put any people in, and I didn't for this one. There's a lot more greenery in this version too, so I didn't have to think about the windows so much. So I was working on that and thinking about how I was going to treat the pavement down below as well. And then I tried another version, simplified even more. And parts of this I really like. So parts of this are the seed for the next version maybe. Parts of the other painting, the last painting, came with me into this one. I really love the dark here that brings your eye right to the focal point. You know, we've got this beautiful contour of the building. We've got the dark greens down here. We've got some action, some movement of people here. We've got some more people here, which gives us this nice balance of the eye moving back and forth between the figures in the scene. Our tendency is to be very drawn to any living thing in the scene. So any people or animals are often going to just, the eye goes right there. We identify with them, I guess. So there's lots that I liked here, but it still didn't quite feel like it was coming together. Although it might look really nice just cropped. So we had these people and this came out. It could be worth a try. And in fact, a number of these actually could be nice if they were cropped. So then I'm about a full day in here. I painted pretty nonstop on this for a full day. And the next day when I came in, I decided, I did my usual what if, and I want to just tell you what I generally do is what are the things that I feel like are non-negotiable. I'm feeling like, well, I really have to put those people in. I really have to paint the foreground. I really have to paint those windows so people can recognize the building. So for this one, I abandoned my have-tos and I focused on the one thing that felt really true and natural, and that was the spire of the building, that beautiful kind of tower-like central area. And I zoomed in so close that we don't have pavement, we don't have much of our tree, we don't have people. I don't even have to put the windows in for this one. It's mostly just roof here. And this to me feels like an Angela painting. You know, it feels like the one. And so that was really exciting to see and let go of those kind of have-tos. And at the same time, it's really easy to feel guilty when you zoom in or when you remove stuff to make your paintings simpler. Because we feel like we're maybe decreasing the level of difficulty. But hey, if it makes your painting more authentic, then why wouldn't you want to go there? So that's kind of been my thought process for the last couple of days. I did one more version of the spire, and this one, I don't love the proportions, but I really like the playful darks that are in here. And so I might spend some time, actually I'm really tempted to spend some time lifting out to create some contours inside of the building and just to see what that does. I'm learning some things as I try these different methods of painting this scene. And it's been really kind of fun to develop this over the course of this last week. So you can see it took me those 7 or 8 versions in to get to that place. So I wanted to show you that just so you can see kind of my thought process. And I should mention too that 3 or 4 of those paintings were really very similar to each other. You know, they felt there was a sameness about them that felt like I was stuck in a rut. And very often that happens for me when I'm working in a series. It feels like you plod along and then all of a sudden, boom, something comes together and you break free of that. And for me, that often involves questioning those have-tos. What do I feel like I'm obligated to put in and I'm struggling with? What if I remove that obstacle and focused on, you know, the stuff that feels really good? So that's what I've been learning. One thing we're going to move over to do some critiquing of your work now. And it was really fun to look at your paintings this week as I went through looking at the paintings that were hashtag critique and just noticing how much loose and self-expressive freedom there was in the paintings that have been posted lately. It's so beautiful to just let watercolor do its thing and to be minimally involved. And it's a struggle because of our desire for perfectionism, just like we were reading from the book, thinking about somebody's going to ask us, how long did it take you to paint that? And we don't want to say, well, you know, I worked on that one for a whole 10 minutes. And it just sprang to life and was beautiful. And it's funny because we have this 2 mystiques about art. Somehow we think art is more worthy when it takes long hours of painstaking work. And yet we also think that artists are making magic and they have this amazing, wonderful gift that ordinary mortals don't have. So they're, you know, magically gifted people, but yet we have to struggle over a painting for hours and days. It seems contradictory. And I think we don't have to feel offended when people say insensitive things about our art, because a lot of times it really just reflects a lack of understanding about the artistic process. And, you know, it's partly our own fault. We're not good at articulating what is involved in making art, what matters when it comes to making art. And so it's a chance when people ask those questions, even when they ask them insensitively, if we can find a creative way to tell them a little bit about the actual magic of painting, we can actually inspire them and help them to know a little bit, maybe better about what to ask, to share our story, to say, well, you know, I only worked on that for 20 minutes, but, you know, it came out of, I struggled through 7 or 8 versions. I'm trying to find a way to paint less so that my painting can say more. And they might not understand it, but it gives them something to chew on and think about for the next art they see. So we we get to share that story and be a part of this conversation around art, around heart-led art, and help them to understand that we're not just slapping paint on and sharing any old thing with people. We share what feels really authentic and resonant for us. And it feels authentic for various reasons. Sometimes it signifies a breakthrough in a skill, advancement in skill. Sometimes it signifies a moment where we felt really free. And our art might not reflect that for someone else, but hopefully we can learn to talk about it with a contagious excitement that maybe they'll get a little picture of how important it is for us, and maybe want to have that same feeling themselves when they make art. That would be really special to share. Okay, we're going to switch over to my little box of paintings that you've been sharing all week. And it was really fun to take a look at these. And I think I can just go through them alphabetically and share them with you. Now, unfortunately, it's a little bit, I kind of messed up here, I think, because I'm going to be showing you a window, but my notes are in a second window. And it means I'm going to have a hard time looking at it. So I'm just going to have to work from memory here. I need to be better at teaching myself how to do this. Okay, this painting is by Autumn. Autumn, you had posted a couple of different pieces, and I wanted to show them both because they're very different, and they're showing your fearless experimentation. And this is the kind of happy accidents that come with being daring. Both of these involve the use of bold color. This one is working a little more dry with that palette knife. So you've got very strong contours and shapes here, and a really bold use of complementary color, which I really like. Working with complementary colors is often challenging because when they blend together, they will get a little muddy, but we can use that mud to make the complements by themselves more vibrant. And this one again is using complementary colors in a slightly more subtle way because your yellow is more like a yellow ochre rather than like the Quinn gold or Aussie red gold in this one. And I really love the fluidity and the beauty here. And we get that from letting the paint flow. It's the how long did you take to do that? Well, maybe it's how long did it take watercolor to do that by itself? And we got to be there and encourage it to do that. I don't know. That's kind of cool. The next one is Chuck's. And Chuck, you commented, you shared this one. You said you painted it in one sitting. So it's got that real fresh immediacy to it. And I always love your strong, bold shapes. And you wanted the focus to be on the barn. And I feel like the barn and the fence are competing a little bit here. I love the fact that we have some very harmonious kind of earth tones everywhere but at the barn. So the colors you chose for the barn actually do help it to be important in the scene, help our eyes to go there because of that pop of red. But you can also play with using some more softness and fluidity away from your focal point so that the eye goes to the focal point as the area where your shapes are crispest. If your fence had been a little bit softer, maybe a kind of a lost and found line in the fence line, that would help the barn to continue to really to not compete with the fence at all, because they're kind of fighting with each other a little bit for dominance in the painting. I have to add too that I really like the little beautiful mountain range in the background. It looks like a mountain range to me. I know it's kind of the green of trees, but I'm feeling mountains, so that's what I've chosen to identify it as. And that's the wonderful thing about heart-led painting is I'm never offended when someone sees something different than what I intended. If they're going to see my trees as mountains, I love that they recognize or identify something that connects with them. It's not saying anything about my skill in depicting that object so much as maybe what they're most familiar with or their eyes are tuned to see, if that makes sense. Next one, Isabella. You commented that you were looking for the feeling of those red taillights, cars' taillights in a tunnel, and the reflecting off the walls of the tunnel. And I think there are things you can do to encourage that mood even more. Some strong, crisp whites might give you that feeling of reflections, because a lot of times if like something's wet and reflective, you're going to see real contrast and sharp edges. And but I love the colors here. It just has this great energy to it. So even though you want to continue working to kind of get that very specific scene and that impression of the scene, this is a great direction to be taking it. It really has such a cool dynamic about it. So I think it's a great seed for continuing to develop this theme. And it's kind of a scary, intimidating subject, at least for me. So I'm looking forward to seeing how you develop it. Do take the time to really study your reference material and look for those areas of strong contrast and areas of crisp, hard versus soft edges, and see how you can use that to really create that strong focal point and sense of depth and distance in your painting. Isn't that a great painting though? I just really like it. Now, Judy, I love that you shared 4 paintings here. You're working in a theme. And I saw that over and over again as I went through the paintings in the community. We saw a lot of these, a lot of you were working to, okay, that zoomed in far too far. A lot of you were working towards a theme, working the same scene over and over again. And that is such a great way to learn. It doesn't have to always be the same reference photo. You can use different reference photos, but the same subject matter to continue to build your skills. Especially if you find yourself bored easily, that's a good way to work those variations. Now, I love, Judy, that you're capturing that feeling of light here. On the top left, we see the light glowing through the trees, very soft and diffused, but it still gives that feeling of the light coming from behind. We're seeing that again on the top right painting. It's again, we don't have strong darks in this scene, so it's very soft. But again, we have, in this one, you actually used warm light. There's a bit of a yellow glow there that definitely helps us to feel like the sunlight is coming from behind the trees and they're just in a little bit of shadow. Down below, we see you went a little stronger with your values. We see some very strong dark trees on the bottom left, and that helps that feeling of strong sunlight. When the sunlight is bright, the shadows are going to be darker, and it takes a brave hand to paint those bold dark shadows. And we get a different mood. You know, it's a little bit starker, a little bit edgier, I guess. And it's exciting to see how you're experimenting with different things. Give yourself permission to be very bold, to almost exaggerate to the extreme. And then you find your place in the middle. All of these, I can't really pick one that I think works better than any others. Although I think when the contrast is stronger, you're going to have a painting that's just that much more compelling from across the room. So that's often a good way to go. We have to be a little brave sometimes with those dark shadows. But I like the consistency in the color choices that you've chosen, and just the way you're developing that. Finding your place between hard and soft. Kirsten, you've got a winter scene as well. And I love the different color choices here. You've used a lot of neutrals. And, I like those soft greens. It has a little bit of feeling like I can't see the sky in this photo or this painting, but I can tell the weather. I can feel that it's an overcast day. The shadows aren't strong, so we know the light is diffused. And how we paint light and dark, it tells us about the weather, even when we can't see the sky. And I think that's really neat, how much we can say just by color choice and how we create contrast. I like too that you're looking for ways to create balance in your painting. You've got this rhythm of warm twigs and grasses, that kind of orangey color. It's not just in one place. The green also creates a rhythm in the trees and that big rock. And then even our dark trees have that feeling of we're balance in the scene. And we look for ways to create that as we paint. And it's kind of a little interplay. You put a warm color on one side, and you move over and you put that warm color on another side just to balance it out. And if you're paying attention to your painting, it's easier to do that and let go of the reference photo a little bit. Larissa, I'm trying to, no, you just had one. Okay. Larissa, I love this painting. You said you played with a new brush for you. And I love the softness contrasted with those scraped lines in the bottom of the painting. But I want to show you, okay, it always zooms in too far apparently. So it's not going to do quite what I want, I don't think. Well, I'm going to try. When I zoomed in, I ended up with this, basically this shape right here. It's a little bit zoomed in a little further than it should be, but look at how compelling that bottom part of the painting is, with that pop of white and then those beautiful carved lines. Actually, looking at this painting made me think that I want to spend some time scratching my paper and exploring that, because I haven't done that in a long time. This is a beautiful composition, the whole painting, but I really love how the focus goes directly to those beautiful, beautiful elements in the lower half when we crop out the top. So both work, but it's just interesting how much the painting changes when we change our cropping. And very, very simple. You know, this is not a complicated scene with a lot of different elements, but it has this beautiful impact, not despite the fact that it's not detailed, but actually because of the fact that it has been simplified. Next one. Why is it not wanting to advance for me here? Oh, there, that's why. I forgot how to do it. Lee, you posted this one, and I know you're working actively in themes these days. I love seeing your city through your paintings, and every time I zoom it gets too big. Okay, there we go. Really, I like the color palette here. It has that overcast day feel as well. And you've really caught the sense of depth here. But most of all, I really liked, and if you take the time to go into the community and go through the paintings, you know, I liked some of the comments that you had. And in fact, I need to look. We're going to find it because it was important and I wanted to share it. Yes, Lee says, the more I live with the last painting, the more I want to develop it such as looser and using my own artistic license. I feel stuck here, and that's okay, as I recognize from experience this is a normal part of the painting cycle of what ifs and thinking outside the box. And I loved how you articulated that to us, because it's very easy to say I feel stuck, and everybody, and then you feel like something's wrong. But when you recognize that that is a natural part of the process, that's huge for your painting development and helping you to grow. And live with those stuck moments and know that they are still leading you to your next, you're still creating the seeds for your next painting, and that breakthrough is just around the corner. We paint right through it. Lindsay has been doing a series of aerial river views. Look at this. It totally could be a view of my frozen North Country. When we fly out to head somewhere in the winter, this is totally what we see. We live near the Peace River. And the snow, we have snow, we have trees, we have shadows, and that river carving itself through the valley. And I love the way you got to explore texture and shape and line. And you did multiple versions. I'm just sharing two. I loved how this one was so soft and simplified. Both of them have just beautiful, beautiful aspects, and you get to let watercolor really show what it can do. If we're not afraid to simplify, when we simplify, we fear that it's going to say something about a lack of skill. But look how pretty. This is a brave artist who is willing to let watercolor do its thing, and we get to show up and collaborate with it. Okay, this one, oh yeah, this is more of the series too. Just showing that progression and that development, and it was really exciting to see all three of these as I went through the community and how you were working through the different issues that came up. Margie painted this. Margie, you said well, I could see Jean Haynes's influence here very much. And Jean is such a wonderful mentor for all of us, because she is sharing her love of watercolor. And I can see as well, because I see a bit of your thumb there, that this is just a beautiful tiny little painting. And would make a wonderful greeting card, actually. This is, we've got hard edges, strong contrast between light and dark around the flowers. Our eyes go instantly there. A little bit of openness to let the flower flow out and connect with the scene. And that keeps the flowers from feeling pasted on in the painting. You've got a really pretty watermark up on the top right, and then beautiful line as well that kind of move the eye in this flowing way. Jean's a master of this. She's a great person to follow for this kind of subject, and it makes me want to paint flowers again, actually, because I haven't in a while. Yeah, usually I get craving them towards late winter. I just start wanting to paint flowers and get some color into the studio. And when we've been looking, a number of the paintings that we've been looking at so far are more from my more advanced students. You guys have been doing this for a while, and so you're building your self-expression. But when you're first starting to develop a looser style, break away from working towards realism, it's really helpful to have mentors to copy it, to get a feel for how they explore and paint a subject. And I love that we have artists who teach that way. I have lots of courses that you can copy the painting step by step. And then here in our live sessions, we get to talk about the whole transition to painting, to taking something like this and then painting your own versions or finding your way to say it. And I'm so proud of all of you as I see you each at your different stages of your journey, and see myself in the transitions as well. Maria has been working on these beautiful simplified landscapes. And I don't think there's any such thing as too simple. I think there's actually incredible high level of difficulty in painting something simple and having it look impactful. I mean, if you can do something very striking and strong with a minimum of brushstrokes, that's not easy. One brushstroke placed wrong can throw the whole painting off. And so it's a good thing to explore. Really love the hints of blue that are popping forward here, Maria. With a subject like this, working simply like this, you can work to a theme and paint quite a few in a short period of time. And it is almost, for me, when I'm doing paintings that I can paint many in a short period of time, that means probably a bunch of them are going to feel disposable beside the ones that have the most impact. So, the really strong ones, they have all these other ones that were their seeds and, they get set aside, they get used as note cards or, bookmarks or whatever, as I work to find that one where all the brushstrokes sing together just right. And something like this too, I think another thing you could do with it is I love the strong line around the darkest contrasts here. You can contrast that with a lot of softness everywhere else. I feel like, and this is, I don't know, maybe this is nitpicky, but the pale values in this scene, if you soften them so that there almost was no line there at all, that would help that dark contrasting area to feel even stronger. So that's something you could try and experiment with in the next version. And there's no wrong answer. It's really just what feels right and most true to you. Pam's been working on a series of trees, and I wanted to show you both of them because we have two versions here. Loving the shadowy feel of the one on the right. And then you painted this one, which was done with a lot of immediacy. You can see that it was very quickly painted, just to get that impression. And I love that we have those three versions here. That's kind of that pendulum between detail and simplicity, and then we find our happy medium in between. But when I try to see what I can get away with by simplifying to the extreme, I'm often surprised at just how much impact something that's simple and quick can have, compared to something that I've labored over and put a ton of detail into. And so we do that little dance of detail and simplicity, and we find our happy medium. So I love seeing that you're doing that. Robbie painted this one. We have another lovely winter scene. We have beautiful warmth and coolness here in this painting. You know, the warmth comes in the sunlight areas. Any of the land that's showing feels very warm. And then in the shadow areas, we have a lot of cool color. And I think, you know, I love seeing how you've explored this, because we have all it's tough, I think, because we have all the warmth on one side of the painting. So then it's like, well, is there a way I can pull some of those blues from the right side over to the left so that I have a little bit more balance there? And yet at the same time, you know, the blues symbolize shadow. So we need to be very careful about where we place the shadow. And so that's just that attention to detail, or observation, that, and then finding that place between observation and artistic expression, you know, sharing your own style. So taking your artistic license and finding a way to balance the scene. I really, really like, my eye keeps being drawn to the softest area of the painting, which is, there's a little blue shadow on the right side of the painting between the two trees in the foreground. I just really like that spot, Robbie. It's so pretty. There's a little bit of line there. We see the texture of the trees, and then we see that rich kind of blue-green shadow behind it. And it's just, my eye just keeps going back there. And it's funny because there's a lot of contrast, you know, between shadow and snow on the, you know, on to the left of that area. But I just really like the prettiness there. So, yeah, I don't know what that says about me. Or, you know, I think I would look for ways to create that softness in more places in the painting, if that makes sense. Maybe the shadows. Well, it's hard. I think you lose if we soften the shadows, and I'm just thinking out loud here. I'm trying to work my head through this. If we soften the blue shadows, then the sun's not going to feel as bright. So you don't want to go too soft. Maybe if we had just a slight, very, very pale blue cast, that would make those edges feel less crisp. See, all of painting is an experiment. So it's like, well, if there's an area that feels like it's taking too much attention away from other areas, I have to figure out a way to minimize that. Maybe this works, maybe it doesn't. I believe, and Robbie, you're a plein air painter. Did you paint this one out out on location? I have the feeling that you did, and I love that, because then it's also sharpening that attention to detail. So it's not so much about getting the scene perfect on location either, but it's about learning to see it. And then you get to enjoy the beautiful moments that come with it. So we don't have to analyze everything that works and everything that doesn't work, which is good, because I'm not always equipped to do that. But we get to look for the parts that really bring us joy and look to do them more. I think another thing that really works here is there's little white sparkles inside of that most dominant tree, that one on the right there. And I really like those as well. So I feel like I kind of made a tangle of trying to critique that one. Robbie, I'm sorry. I do really, I like it. It's beautiful. Not that what I think matters that much, but Ursula, you had, I think I shared both of them here. Yes. So you've been working on another theme of this moonlit landscape. And so this was the one I saw first. And I really love the glow of the moon. I love the colors you've chosen here. And if I were to critique this one, I would have suggested maybe pulling up some of those trees up against that glowing moon shape. So we have some branches in front of the shape of the moon. But then I saw this one that you painted, and isn't it wonderful? I think this one has just such a beautifully composed feel to it. We've got white branches, we've got really dark branches. The moon has that beautiful glow, and the softness throughout just has this beautiful poetry to it. So I love that you took the time to work to a theme, and we get to see how that gives us something to compare our work to. And actually, that's one thing that made critiquing your work this week actually really a little bit easier, was that so many of you have been working to a theme and posting multiple versions of the same scene. And when I can see how it's evolving for you, well, I just get so excited. And I also get to see kind of what your strengths are, what you're building on, and you get to have something to compare your work to. If you just have one version of something, you can't really. It's just hard to evaluate it without comparing it to other artists, and that's a whole struggle in itself. So just something to think about. I have about 1 minute, so I need to wrap up here. Robbie says, no need to apologize, Angela. I'm happy with the painting, but I have a picture of a softer, looser version in my mind's eye that I haven't been able to make happen yet. And I could see seeds of that, I think, in this painting, which is probably why I was having a hard time knowing how to kind of explain it or offer some suggestions. I think, yeah, if maybe working really soft, and then adding your crispness at the very end might be the way to go for a version there. And you might not need to add any crispness either. Anyhow, so I really loved seeing your work this week. I'm going to wrap up here. I've got an appointment in town here in a few minutes. And we've got like the busiest day planned ever. And my daughter's going for her driver's test today. So you can send good thoughts her way. She's really prepared. She's just really nervous. So, and I get to be a mom of a driver. So that'll be nice for our lives, I think. Anyhow, thank you for joining me today. I look forward to seeing your work in the community as always. If you had questions I didn't cover or some feedback to share, we can talk about that in the community. I'd love to hear it. And I will be back next week. We're doing watercolor boot camp towards at the end of January, the 30th, the 31st, and February 1st. You are invited to join me in that if you'd like. You do need to sign up. If you have not signed up, you won't see the notifications about the event. So Robin can make sure we get a link up for that if you haven't signed up yet. It's open to anybody. It's going to be information you already know. But there might be something that stands out or helps you with something you've been working on. I wish you the best today, and I will see you again very soon. Bye for now.